All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7:04. We're going to go ahead and start our presentation. And I already see, there we go. All right, cover slide. So welcome, everyone. I appreciate your time this evening to kind of get a precursor introduction to our Forestry Challenge Championship. We'll be covering quite a bit tonight. I'm going to roll through the first part fairly quickly. You can always go back and look at the recording and look at the slides. What I can do is PDF these slides and email them to the teachers so that they can be shared with everyone. We want this information out and we want people to be looking at it before they get there. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure you have access to this information. So with that, as you can see the map of California, our championship event is in Tuolumne County, fairly centrally located. And we have groups coming from all over California and also a group from Ottawa, Canada. So very excited to have our first International Forestry Challenge event starting on Thursday. So let's go ahead and get going. We're going to go over some housekeeping. I'm going to show you a list of the participants. We're going to talk briefly about some of the paperwork that's involved, getting here, directions to Camp Sylvester, just some of the logistics of arriving and checking in, accommodations and food, our event schedule. I'll have some information about field testing. I think students are going to be interested in knowing before they come. And then we'll dive into the focus topic. I want to spend more time on that than the rest of it. We'll talk about our field trip and our focus topic. So with that, let's go ahead and get going. This is the largest Forestry Challenge Championship that we've had. We have had, I think, 62 students, and that was a few years ago. We did an event in 2018 and 19. In 20 and 21, we were shut down with COVID. And we were back last year with a smaller group. So we have approximately 100 students traveling from 14 schools. And we have advisors, primary advisors for each school, and then a total of 25 advisors and chaperones. The team numbers there, everybody will have a team number, and we'll use those throughout the event. So just a reminder that you need to go to the website, to the championship page. On the teachers, the For Teachers page, you'll see some very important things. Foremost are the release forms. If you are not 18, you need your parents to sign the minor release form. Adults, we prefer you do that in advance, but you can do it when you get there. The other thing to note is the mill tour release form. If you're taking a mill tour, you'll need to have one of those signed, and for people under 18, their parent needs to sign that as well. So just pay attention to the website and look at what you need to have when you come, especially for people under 18. I also will point out on the right side is the what to bring icon. We'll go over that very briefly. Here it is, folks. So there is a list. I'm not going to go through each item, but I just want you to be aware we do have a list and we want you to bring the things on the list. So there are things for your team and then also things for you as an individual. The group from Canada, you won't need sleeping bags. We will have linens provided for the places we're going to be staying. All right, this is the mill tour. So we're doing an additional mill tour, which is for the event. And we've set up this schedule for everyone, and everyone has the schedule. So just to remind you to try to be on time. For instance, Mira Loma, I know they're coming early. There'll be lunch. And we want them to show up about 10 minutes before the time on for the tour. Once you get there, you'll turn in just your mill tour release forms. You'll get a hard hat and a safety vest, and you'll be off with your group on the tour. The tour will last approximately an hour, and it's a fantastic tour. You'll get to see all kinds of fun things and ask questions. So anyway, that is the tour schedule, and everyone who's going on the tour should have it. We do have a couple volunteers that are also going to be taking the tour along with us. So forecast, travel concerns aren't much. There is supposed to be some snow tonight. Couple of inches, but you can see with the temperatures throughout Tuesday, Wednesday, they'll be above freezing for a good part of the day, enough, I think, to melt off anything that happens to fall at Pinecrest. Our field study location is at a lower elevation, so there's about an inch of snow forecasted. Even if it stays, I don't think it'll be an issue. The ground is basically free and clear at the field study site. At camp, I believe there's still 2 or 3 feet of snow, but roads are plowed and there's place for parking. So we'll have white stuff around us, but we won't be having to try to drive it. So you can check, there's a weather forecast link on the website. All right, one thing that's important is the emergency contact information. There you will find the directions to the camp and emergency phone numbers. I believe I have that. Yes, so this is what it looks like. So you can take a photo of that, download it, or just use your phone to access that as you're driving. And you can also type in the address of Camp Sylvester, which is on Dodge Ridge Road, and it should lead you right to it. I don't believe there's any things that are going to lead you in the wrong direction. It's pretty straightforward, not far from the highway. So just be advised that's all there for you. And also just note, if a parent has an emergency and needs to reach their child, that is a phone number, a contact phone number for the camp. Our phones don't necessarily work well there, so that is probably the best number after hours. Okay, you'll be driving in on Dodge Ridge Road, turning into the main entrance parking, and going to DeBoer Hall for registration. We'll make sure you have your release forms. Oh gosh, there's no camera. Make sure you have your release forms. Make sure your names are spelled correctly. The advisors will get some information in the packet, and you'll pick up your event t-shirt. All right, here's a map of the camp. You'll get an advisor booklet or a sort of an event program. That map will be included. You can see many cabins scattered throughout camp and their capacities. We're going to be filling up most of the cabins, I would say 2/3 of them. And a few folks will be staying off site, but a majority of folks will be staying on campus certainly. All right, so we have our cabin assignments. This will also be included with the program. The advisor booklet, so everybody will have plenty of cabin space. They're very nice cabins in their model. So nice facility. Okay, I do have a menu. I did send it out to everybody in advance. The take-home message to skip there, we're going to have food for everybody, we think. We'll have vegetarian options and vegan options. You can see Thursday night we'll have lasagna. Friday we'll have a full day of food, a full-on egg and sausage breakfast in the morning. We'll be packing our lunch during breakfast on Friday to take with us on our field trip on Friday midday. And then when we get back, we'll have a fajita dinner that'll have plenty of options for people with and who don't necessarily want to eat. Let's see, Saturday, we'll be having a nice big breakfast. We'll also be using leftovers to pack our lunches. We can eat those lunches on site, or we can take them as we go. That way the kitchen staff has a chance to start cooking. So if you have any concerns about the menu, let me know. If you have any specific needs, you can bring your own food and store it in the refrigerators and then heat it up in the microwave. You've got the option to do that. So just check with me if you've got any questions. Our event schedule, this is a 3-day, 2-night event, very different than our fall events, which are 3 nights and 4 days. As you can see, registration will begin at 4 p.m. You can arrive slightly before that, but we really don't want anybody driving into camp early because we won't be ready for you. So take your time and sightsee if you're early. We'll have dinner and then we'll do a panel in the evening on Thursday. After the panel, we'll break into student work time. We will have an Ask the Forester. It will be a different format than in the fall. We will have a walk-up format rather than an appointment format. At 10:30, all work stops and everybody gets to bed and gets some rest. Friday is a big day. We start at 7:30 in the morning with breakfast and allow time for everybody to make a lunch. We'll be leaving the camp at 9 o'clock and we won't be returning at 5:30. At 5:30, there's a typo there. We'll have dinner from 5:30 to 6:30, and then we will start our presentation prep. I believe it's 6:45. The schedule might be shifting slightly. Again, we'll allow time for the teams to prepare their presentation. Again, the walk-up Ask the Forester format. And then from 8 to 8:30, or perhaps I think a little later than this, we're going to have our medic and retired teacher Dan do a fireside chat with the teachers and talk to them about some exciting things we're thinking about trying to offer teachers. Our day ends late on Friday at 10:30. On Saturday, we'll have our breakfast again at 7:30 and start our presentations around 9:15. If students are not presenting, they'll be in what we expect. Writing thank you notes and waiting for their turn. So I'll get more into the details on how we're going to set up our presentation. We should be done about noon. You can stick around and eat your lunch at camp, or you can take it on the road with you and start your ride home. Okay, so detailed schedule, just to point out Friday, we are going to load our vehicles and travel about a half an hour to a place called Lions Reservoir for our day. There are bathrooms there. There's ample parking. The road is adequate. It's not a paved road, but it is fairly well maintained. We'll split the group in half. Half the group will test in the morning and do their field investigation in the afternoon, and the other half will do the opposite. We'll eat lunch together at the Reservoir parking area. It's a beautiful lake. It has, as I said, it has a quick toilet, so we'll be taken care of there. As soon as everybody's done with testing and field work, we will post the answers to the test and give people a chance to look at the test and ask questions while we're on site. We'll probably have an impromptu panel after that before we head back. So if anybody has any questions about the field study, they'll have a chance to ask and perhaps go out into the field and sort of think through some things before we drive away. We will be behind a locked gate, so there will be some issues with coming and going. Once we get in, we'll lock the gate behind us so the public doesn't enter. The area is not open for recreation until April 28th. So we will be in there, which is kind of nice. It'll be nice and quiet. There may be some hikers coming through, but generally we'll have the place to ourselves. Once we return to Camp Sylvester, we'll have dinner again, and then we will start our presentation. So just to kind of make the note about the testing and field work will be split morning and afternoon. Okay, so our trip to the location, it's about 22 minutes, 14 miles. It's not far and it's fairly straightforward. It's back down the Highway 108 corridor. The reason that we decided to have our field study a ways, separate from camp, is that camp is several, probably at least a couple thousand feet higher than where we're going, and we need to choose a place that did not have snow. And I wasn't certain that we could get in here until about a week ago, and it was a bit touch and go, a little bit of sweat, waiting to see what was going to happen. But this is a perfect location for all of our outdoor work and essentially snow free, so it'll be great. So we will be traveling there for the day, and then we'll be back up when the day is over. All right, so just to point out that we have on our website the materials that the students need to know before they arrive. These are much the same as what they got in the fall. So anybody who went to a fall event should be fairly familiar with these different things. One thing that may be different for those of you that attended Santa Cruz is that you're going to have some different species to identify. So hopefully you've had some time to look into that and see some pictures. For those of you coming from far, far away, some of these species are going to be unusual to you, but we'll make sure that you get a quick refresher before you out to the field. We also are asking students to know how to use a key, and we're asking them to use a variety of tools. One note that we did do, we took the implement bore and site class tables off of our list, not dealing with industrial timber this year, and so we don't need those tools. We are adding densitometer, which is important for the kind of work that we're doing. So all of those red highlighted words have links, so please take a look. One thing I'll point out is number 7 on the timber cruising down at the bottom. We do want you to know mill production processes. There are videos of a couple mill tours, and if you don't take the mill tour, we are going to ask students to know about that. So we have to take a look at those. All right, some things about field testing I want to make sure everybody understands. We're going to set things up differently than in the fall. We're going to have a loop on the route and 12 stops. So once you get onto that testing circuit, the entire thing without a break. Each stop will be 10 minutes, and that includes the time to rotate between. So once the bell rings or the whistle blows, it's time to move, but that move time is part of the 10 minutes. So we're going to remind them to, put a hustle on between those stations. They aren't too far apart, but you don't want to waste time getting from one to the other. So we want the teachers to go out and check out the test, but we can't have them interfering. So that's standard protocol. Teams will be given everything they need. They won't have to bring anything with them except a board and a calculator. Then we will post the test and make sure everybody understands the test. And if you have any questions, we'll go back and take a look at the test. All right, so this is the secret stuff, so to speak. This is what's going to be on the test, and I'm going to point out a few things that are different from the fall, so that everybody is aware of what is going to be expected, which is a step up from the fall. So the first point here is that the test is worth 100 points. In the fall, it's worth 150. It is only worth 40% of the total score, but that is significant. So on this test, we're going to have 2 stations with clinometer and D-tape trees that the students measure. We have one station that it involves the Biltmore stick without the use of any other devices. We will have an angle gauge plot with a limiting distance table that they'll need. We'll have a compass and pacing exercise. We'll have a volume table tree. Something to point out different about the volume table tree is that they'll have to take the raw data, round it, plug it into the correct diameter and height classes, and discover the volume, and then do the calculation for value all in one scoop. It will not be separated like it is in the fall. So if the students get off track with step one, the rest of them are going to be a spiral downward. So it's important to note every step in that process. We will have a species composition plot. It is a very difficult plot. It has 5 species. So what we did is we flagged every tree under 10 inches that does not need to be counted, that's inside the plot. So that will save some time, but it's going to be a hustle, and we're going to make sure students know, hurry up and at least write down the species. And then if you get the number of trees in that for that species wrong, at least you got the species written down. We are going to have a crown classification location. We're not going to give the vocabulary out. Those terms, as you may recall, are dominant, codominant, intermediate, and suppressed. We will not be giving those words as word vocab or word bank. So students will have to know those 4 words. We will have 2 trees to ID by key. They will be at the same station, and they're relatively simple. We'll do a densitometer transect. That's something we've all done in the fall. We'll have some maps and we'll be talking about where trees grow, where different range species grow in their ranges. We will have some questions on the process of milling wood and products that come from that. And then lastly, we'll have some questions about tree physiology. So there'll be a lot to cover. There's not a lot of wordy questions. It's more using the tools, that information down on the page. It's going to be tough. Okay. So on Saturday, I want to talk a little bit about our schedule for Saturday. Again, you'll be making lunches during breakfast, going to the holding pen. We're not presenting. The presentation is worth 150 points, so it's 60% of the total score. Now, I did make a change. I made a decision. This topic is very complex, and so we're going to give the students up to 20 minutes to give their presentation. We will still have a 5-minute Q&A at the end, like we do in the fall, but they can use 15 to 20. If they only use 15, there'll be no deduction. If it's 10, yeah, then they probably won't be able to cover everything anyway. So we are going to give them time because the presentations are always rushed, and we have the opportunity to take a little bit more time. So we're going. Okay. So let's talk about the presentation outline. I think I'm going to spend as much time on this as I can. It's about 7:20. I think I'll probably spend about 20 minutes on this, and then we'll have some time for question and answer. Are there any questions so far about the logistics of the event, getting there, permission slips, or anything about that? Don't see anybody with a raised hand, so we'll just keep going. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the focus topic. So the topic this year, as you saw posted on the website, is creating a fire resilient landscape on the Stanislaus National Forest. So what we decided to do, this championship event is different than the fall events. At the championships, students have already gone through the process of creating their own data set. So we're not going to do that this year. But what we did the first 2 years of championships is we did just that. And it was a repeat in the fall. So we want to take this to the next level. Last year, we went in a very different direction. We didn't have any data at all. It was very much a topic having to do with relationships between entities and how to get along and manage the forest. So we're kind of doing a hybrid this year. We are going to give them the data. We're going to give them data that was collected in 2021. And that way they won't consume half the day collecting data. So we are going to give it to them. The other issue we've run into is they don't get out in the field till Friday. So on Thursday night, they were kind of sitting around going, well, we don't have any data to work with. So we're going to give them that data right up front. We're going to talk about it when we get there, and they'll have access to that. So that's something to kind of sink their teeth into the first night. Let's see. This year, we'll provide the data set. And then what we're going to do is ask the students to go beyond that data set and propose action with the current data we have and where we need to go, how to propose that action on the landscape. Students will be actually, not with spray paint, but they will be marking timber. They will be marking trees to remove and trees to keep, and explaining why their proposed action is going to is going to meet the goals project called Sarah. Talk about it in just a minute. So they get best of both worlds. They get their data without having to generate it Friday, and we'll take them a step. Okay, so on the website is a section called Focus Topic, and there are 8 points, 8 items that we want them to take a look at. Some of these are super quick. It's a couple minutes to watch a video. It's a 2-page document. Some of these are a little bit longer, but we want to start building the puzzle and putting the pieces together because this is a complex topic. So I'm going to go into the particulars of this, but what I wanted to point out with the slide is that this information is available to them and has been for. So those are the things that we're going to be talking about. So I want to define a few things first so we know what we're talking about when we start throwing out terminology. SNF is the Stanislaus National Forest. I'll show you a map of it in just a minute and how it relates to the other national forests in California. Seral, and I for many months was calling it feral, but it is Seral. Social and ecological resilience across the landscape. It's a project. So the project has been proposed, it's been approved, and it will start. It already, some phases have started, but it's going to continue. And this is where the students are going to be able to weigh in on how they think the project should be. So we're right on the cusp of something really big that's going to happen, and the students are going to be listened to. In fact, the forest supervisor is going to be listening on Saturday, and hopefully taking in what the students are saying and hopefully influence the project proceed. It's a long-term project. So YSS, Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions, collaborative group. It's a coalition of people that live locally who are all interested in the forest and wanting it to be healthy. However, they come from very different backgrounds. I've been to several of these meetings, and there's a variety of folks there with different viewpoints. Sometimes they don't agree, but their goal is to come to conclusion or consensus and to advise the National Forest as they proceed on this project and other projects. So I think they've been a highly successful group, and that's why they've been asked to weigh in on how this Seral project should go. One other term I want to define is SDI, or Stand Density Index. This is a thing that we haven't talked about in the fall events. It's a bit complex. So I want to make sure that we define it, and we're going to be working with this index, which is a valueless number. So it's used as a measure of stocking level or density or amount of crowding that's going on or non-crowding in the forest. It's based on the number of trees and the basal area of those trees. And so it measures competition or how crowded the stand is. And there's been some research done recently with Stand Density Index. It is absolutely fascinating. So I decided to go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and use it. And I'm hoping to get to the point where the students can calculate SDI on their plot. That's where we're headed. So it'll be a fun thing, and we'll be working out. Right now, the formulas are all in metric units. We're trying to convert them to English units. Sorry, guys from Canada, but we're going to try to take our data and plug it in and generate an SDI from this plot. Okay, so I'm going to show some maps just to get a sense of where we are. You can see on the left is the National Forest System, and what I don't understand is you'll see about mid-screen there's red. There's 2 forests in red that are joined together, and they should be different colors. I'm not sure why they're the same, but the lower half of that red is the Stanislaus National Forest. You'll see right below that is a big circle in green, and that is forested, but it is Yosemite National Park, so it's not part of the forest system. You will be directly north of Yosemite National Park. So if you take that red area of the Stanislaus National Forest and look to your right, you'll see a close-up map. The green line outline around the entire sort of the whole map is the Stanislaus National Forest. The orange area or yellowy orange area is the area of influence of YSS. So the two are fairly well aligned. And then the Seral project is within that boundary. It's a big project. It doesn't look big compared to the size of the other two, but it is quite a large project, and it covers a good portion of the National Forest and the YSS boundary. So that's where we're going to be, Central California in the Sierra. Okay, so this is a project. Let's go back and you can see the outline of that purple polygon there, the Seral outline. You can see how it's sort of a rectangle with the lower part that's bigger. So if you look at this map, you can sort of trace the outline of the project. So what this shows is the different proposed treatments of the Cerro project and point they have been approved. So we'll get into that in more detail once the students arrive, but you can see that there's several colors that denote different types of treatment. And so it is across the landscape. The areas in color are national forests. The areas in gray are other ownerships, but they're working with adjacent landowners to try to coordinate all these treatments so that this entire area is touched and it's not just the blocks that belong to the national forest. So the green is the biggest one to point out, and that is where they're going to thin and actually harvest merchantable timber. That is the focus of our area, and I'll show you a close up of that. That's where we're going to be working. You can see other colors. Orange is mechanical reduction, and then purple is other types of forest thinning without harvesting merchantable. So there's all this. You can see it's a huge project. It is varied in its treatments, and those treatments have already started. If you'll see, just to note the blue lines down towards the bottom, those are fuel breaks, and some of those fuel breaks have already been initiated and those done. In fact, last year we went and looked at one of those all elevations. So it's a complex project. It's a very large and ambitious project. Okay, so zooming in a little bit more, you can see on the left side of your screen a map showing numbers, and you'll see 301. That is the unit. They sent me the stand data from that unit because it's the closest one to where we're going to be. So if you look directly to the left, 301, you'll see a white square with a road kind of going around the right side of it, or side, A in the middle. That is our unit. That's where we're going to be doing our field study. We'll be on the shore of Lyons Reservoir, just to the north of that unit for our testing. And again, there's a map on the right that shows entering from the highway from the gate and driving down several hundred feet to the lake, and you can see where we're going to be testing and also where we're going to be doing our field. All right, so that gives you a sense of where we are. So I wanted to back up and really talk about why we're studying this, why there's a project of this scale. And of course, this all has to do with the destructive wildfires over the past 20 years. And also, beetle kill from drought. The forest has really taken a beating. So several events have sort of cascaded. First the drought, then the beetle kill, and then the wildfires. So there's a lot of forest that's in terrible condition that generated. One thing that's interesting about this entire Cerro project area, and I think one reason they're focused on it so much, is that it has not burned. It has not had the mega fire. There was a fire called the Rim Fire that was north of there, closer to Yosemite, or actually south, in 2013. But this entire corridor is basically unburned. So there's an opportunity to try to get out there and do something. So if and when a mega fire comes, there'll be a different outcome than some of the other fires we've seen in the last few years. All right, so in response to this crisis that has been developing over the last decade or so, the Forest Service published a publication called Confronting the Wildfire Crisis, Strategy for Protecting Communities and Improving Response in America's Forests. That document is posted on the website. It's one of the links that I provided at the bottom of that page. So they published this document explaining that they have to pick and choose because they can't treat everything at once. So the agency identified 10 fire sheds that were the best places to start. And one of them is called the Stanislaus Landscape. And guess what? It's right there. So it's a bigger area than the Cerro project, but the Cerro project was the first trying to treat the Stanislaus Landscape. So you can see the arrow pointing from the top. You see the green blob down, the light green blob, that is the Stanislaus Landscape. It basically overlaps with the Cerro project and the Stanislaus National Forest. Now, the thing about this that makes it different than just saying we're going to do a project is that there's some money behind it. So you can see that I believe it was, I forget the bill, BIL. I'm not remembering the name. Let's see, but 21.8 million has been given just for fiscal year 22, and there'll be a total of 5 million to do this work. Some of this work is very expensive, and the timber harvest doesn't necessarily pay for the work that is done. So you can see down at the bottom of the slide, the partners list has YSS. It also has Tuolumne County, which has been very cooperative. And so there's just a really good opportunity to cooperate and get something done. YSS was already in existence for several years, so there's already a relationship there, and there's already collaboration and a consensus. Okay, so let's see, did I miss something? No. Okay, so we're going to provide data from Unit 301 as a starting point. So what we're going to do is to compare it to historical data from a research paper that was written last year. It was a brilliant research paper that compared 1911 data to 2011 data. One of the other things that's very unique about this area is they actually got out and took data in 1911. And so, we see these pictures of these iconic landscapes with large trees, space between them. The trees aren't crowded, but the opportunity here is they actually quantified what the forest was like back then in the Smokies. So what you see here, and we'll talk about this more when we get there, is what they call violin plots. And you see on the bottom, there's 3 different kinds of forests, starting at low elevation with pine, middle elevation of xeric, and high elevation of mesic. And you'll see on the bottom the 2 time periods, 1911 and 2011. So you see that they're different, they're offset. So the SDI on the left, on the x-axis, and you see the width of the plot is how many points are at that point, how many data points are at that level. So you can see, for instance, in the pine habitat, there's a lot. In 1911, there were a lot of plots that had a very low SDI. And in 2011, many of those plots those spaces had a higher SDI. So what you see also with the shading is anything below 25 is free of competition. 25 to 35% capacity is partial, and then full site occupancy up to 60. Above 60, it's maximum, meaning it is overstocked. It is extremely overstocked and in a very unnatural condition. So I love this graphic because in a nutshell, it shows you how out of whack things are now compared to what they were in 2000 or 1911. So we're going to give them that paper, and that paper has the calculation of how to calculate SDI. We're going to hope to do that in our plots. So on Friday, we're going to be assigning these teams to a 5th acre plot, and they're going to go out into the forest and do some work. So just starting at the top here, they're going to determine the number of trees in the plot and their diameters, any tree 10 inches or greater, and their species. So that's the starting point. Then they're going to map the location of all those trees in the plot. We're going to give them a template. It's going to be easy, hopefully fairly quick. A tree is due north and it's 10 feet from the plot center. They can put a circle on their graph. So we're going to want them to spatially represent their trees so that they can show us how and why they would remove certain trees, not remove others. So they're going to calculate the basal area, which is a very simple calculation using their diameters. And then they're going to use 2 colors for flagging to show which trees they would retain versus which ones they would remove. It has to be within the legal parameters of the Cerro project. So telling us that they want to cut every tree is not legal. It's not the specifications of the project. We are going to provide them with a list of specifications. There's the trees to cut and there's the trees not to cut, and they'll have to apply that on the landscape. At first I asked for spray paint because that's how foresters mark trees, but I was told no. And actually, flagging will work because if students can flag the trees, they can look at it and adjust their flagging. Once you paint a tree, it's better than paint. So we're going to have fun with 2 colors, and I want the students to mark on their graphic representation of their trees, which trees they're going to remove and which ones why, and what the residual basal area, what the SDI is now. And what it is a 1 plot sample, but I think it'll give them a good idea of how to go about doing that. So let's see. And then we're going to ask them, is this mark, or will you be creating something resilient, and will you be creating something similar to historic condition? That's going to be an interesting thing to for them to explore. And it's going to be shocking because that paper with the violin graphs concluded that for every 8 trees in the forest, now 7 of them should be removed. So it's a pretty shocking thing to look at on the ground about actually do that. We also want them to just do a very brief look at understory vegetation and woody debris. There's a lot of places out there we have a hard time putting plots in because we're climbing over big logs. It's downwood debris that's some of these trees are dying. They've had beetle, they've had drought, they haven't had mega fire, but they've had some other things cause them to die. We try to keep the plots away from any dangerous conditions, snags that would be or anything. So we had a challenge out there on Friday putting our plots in, but we got 12 plots, so we'll be reusing those plots in the afternoon. Okay, so almost done here. Items to be addressed in the presentation will be some history of the Cyril project. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I want them to talk about why this project is here and what's caused it, and you know, the priority of this landscape with only 10 in the nation and cash. And then data, historic versus modern data, and then start getting into what their plot, what they had in their plot, trees per acre, basal area, their calculation of SDI for their plot. And then the diagram showing which trees they would remove, they would retain, and how that mark corresponds with Cyril treatment guidelines. And if they would propose something different that's outside the guidelines, why? And there is some wiggle room within the prescription for supervisors going to be listening. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. And if the students want to go outside the bounds of the designated prescription and explain why they would do something different, then that's certainly what we do. So there is no right answer, and that's what makes it. That makes it hard. Okay, so the final product will be a 20-minute PowerPoint that describes Cyril, historic versus current inventory, excuse me, plot characteristics, their sample mark, and their reasoning. So of course they're going to be able to go out, take photos, talk to people, interview foresters. They have maps, tables, and information. We're going to give them a flash drive, and then they'll have the judges' score sheet to make sure they address the topics that are given. So with that, we are gonna, the reason I was doing this now and trying to get some of this out of the way is that we want to have panelists on Thursday evening. So we have 4 panelists, and 2 of them were on the ground floor of forming YSS. And also we'll tell some stories about how YSS was approached to come up with the Cyril project. So there was apparently a sort of an epiphany. Forest Service, so way high in the Forest Service, sitting down with YSS, and from what I understand, saying, don't come out of the room until you have some consensus and you have a plan. We also have Jake Baker from the Stanislaus National Forest. He is one of the people implementing the project, the Cyril project, and is going to be designing the timber sales next several years. And then we have Chris Dow from Sierra Pacific Industries. We talked about cross-boundary partnerships and treating landscapes and not just ownerships. Sierra Pacific Industries works closely with the National Forest and is doing their own food breaks and their own treatments, try to coordinate. So that will be his perspective. I think it's going to be a great panel, a lot of knowledge in the room, and some good discussion. All right, so this is Lyons Reservoir. It's a beautiful place. That picture was taken on Friday, and you can see it's a healthy green forest, and we want to keep that. So there is time for questions if anybody has questions, and if not, we'll let everybody go and reconvene on Thursday evening. Questions from the folks? Okay, either everybody's asleep or it was perfectly clear.
Vincent?
Yeah, I have a question. What about the treatments? You said that they were going to mark the trees, but you said that there would be, they would have to choose for different treatments. So will they have like a kind of descriptive of every kind of treatment that they'll be using?
Yes, yes. So you saw on the map with the different colors, this area is designated for a timber harvest. So there will be merchantable timber removed from this area. They have, I was sent the specifications for marking these trees according to the Forest Service. So first thing they tell you is, you know, you can't do this, you can't take these trees, you can take these. And then it goes down to, okay, so when there's a black oak and it's not too close to a cedar, you know, then you keep the black oak. And so there's some guidance that's given. So yeah, there's a do's and don'ts list that the students are going to be given. But the trick is, and the challenge is going to be applying that to what they're seeing on the ground, because these are big, tall trees, and there's a lot of them. So how do you actually make those decisions, and why do you make those decisions?
Okay, so it's more like a prescription than like a silvicultural treatment. It's more like they'll have to really, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what they call the document, but it essentially is a prescription.
Okay.
And there's a desired outcome, not only for the project, but for resilience and restoration based on what we know we had in 1911. So and those may be two different things. They may get to the point where they're using these specifications, they're marking their plot, and they may realize this is not meeting the specs. This is not meeting the desired outcome. It may not be similar to 1911. And so that's the part that's the discussion topic is how do you restore a landscape? And are the parameters, the confines of the prescription going to allow you to do the work that needs to be done?
Cool. Thanks.
And for Juan and the folks that came to fall events, I see Christy and Blake. This is a step beyond. This is definitely a step beyond for the students. It's going to be a challenge, and they will have some help out in the field, but you know, we're just helping them identify and measure those trees. But their decision on which trees they would remove, which they would keep, is going to be up to them. And we're gonna ask the folks helping the students out in the field not to say, "Oh, I did this, I did this." That's up to the students.
We have a question from Blake in chat. What is
Okay.
the social resilience in Cyril?
Okay, that's a good question. So the social aspect is that we have a mill that operates. We have people who work in the woods, and for everybody that works in the woods, there's some statistics. Several people have jobs from that. So you know, there is an economy that operates around timber harvest, and there's a usefulness to that product that helps society. So you know, and one would argue that getting our wood products here instead of importing them from other places is really a ecologically and socially responsible thing to do. We're sourcing it locally, just like you might with farm before. So yeah, a lot of jobs, a lot of economies depend on a timber industry. The other thing that's really exciting about this area, the Stanislaus and Tuolumne County Stanislaus National Forest, is that they have biomass, and they're developing more biomass, and they're developing wood pellet plants. There's a lot of exciting things happening that are going to use byproducts from some of the parts of the forest that aren't commercially timber. So this is a perfect place for us to be. I wish that every county had the infrastructure that this county has. So yeah, it definitely affects the social growth and the economy at local. Okay, anything else?
Diane, what's the expectation with respect to how much of this material we can bring with us? Like, there's a lot of great resources. I'm not sure all my students have had a chance to get through them. If they're able to print this stuff, can they bring it with them and keep it with them? Or
Yes.
it's stuff that has to be
Yes.
turned in at the end of the night? Or
Life is an open book test. They can download it off the website. They can print things. They can do their own research. You know, look things up. Using now most of the stuff I've already posted on the website, but I didn't post the Malcolm North paper, the paper with violin plots. I think we should do that tomorrow, Chris, so that everybody has access to that. We are going to provide that on the flash drive. So yeah, please bring everything and anything. It's an open book test. Now the field test, just to back up, when we're measuring trees and we're doing PID, they will not be allowed to use those resources. But this is
yeah, of course.
and this is one exciting thing about introducing this ahead of time. Anything they want to bring with them that they want to use for the presentation, any facts, any figures, any graphics, bring them. Yep, bring them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm making a note to post this research paper. Several researchers were involved, all, you know, very famous in the world of forest ecology. I've been trying for years to get Malcolm North, the author, to come, and he's a hard guy to reach. He's a hard guy to catch. Okay, so I see that we are off screen share, Chris.
Yep, I forced you off
Thank you.
just
Yep,
to put it back
okay.
so we can see everybody.
Very good.
Does anybody else have any questions? You guys can just unmute yourself and speak up at this point.
Okay, I have a question. Are you guys as excited about this as I am? I mean, this is fun. This is a great topic. It's above and beyond, like I said. The fact that these people who are involved with this in real life are going to be there and listening, I think is, and it's not going to snow 8 inches. All right. Okay, so, yeah, there's no point in belaboring, so, we might as well just go ahead and end the call. If you have any questions, my email is on the website under contacts. You can email me. I'd be happy to answer them. We have a couple days now to finish our preparations and packing and getting ourselves there, and we'll have the same thing to do. And I wish everyone safe travels and look forward to being together on Thursday evening. Okay, let's go ahead and stop the recording.